The moment I screamed for my child and heard silence instead, something inside me snapped. That's the day they stole my baby, and the day I stopped being afraid. Welcome to Subscribe now if you believe some betrayals deserve more than justice. They deserve silence, planning, and perfect payback. I used to believe the world was mostly good, that if you loved deeply and lived honestly, life would reward you with peace. That belief died the day they took my daughter from my arms and smiled while doing it. Her name was Ava. She had a laugh that could soften concrete and eyes the color of summer skies after rain. From the moment I held her, everything in my world made sense. I wasn't just someone's daughter or someone's mistake. I was her mother. And that was enough. But being a mother didn't fit into their plans. The they I speak of? My in-laws, the Whitmores. Rich, powerful, respected, and venomous beneath the surface. When I met Carter, their son, he wasn't like them. Or so I thought. He was charming, grounded, said all the right things. We fell hard, fast, young. My family wasn't thrilled. I was 20, he was 27, and from two different worlds. But I was in love. And when I got pregnant, I thought it would bring us closer. Instead, it pulled back the curtain. Carter changed. He became distant, cold. But his parents? Oh, they stepped in like saviors. Paid for prenatal care, gifted a nursery that looked like it belonged in a magazine, told me I was part of the family now. It wasn't generosity. It was a transaction. What I didn't know was that while they were smiling at me, they were preparing paperwork, manipulating records, building a case that I was unstable, that I had no financial independence, and a history of depressive episodes. All lies, exaggerated, twisted truths, weaponized by their money and connections. I gave birth in a private wing of their chosen hospital. I remember Carter holding my hand as I pushed, whispering, "You're doing amazing, baby." But 2 days later, he was gone. And so was Ava. They told me she had complications, that she needed to be transferred for better care, that I should rest. I believed them. The next time I asked to see her, they told me I couldn't, that I had been deemed emotionally unfit, that I had signed temporary guardianship under sedatives, a lie I still can't prove. My screams echoed through those pristine white halls like the cries of a woman being murdered, because something was murdered that day, my motherhood. The Whitmores filed for emergency custody, claimed Carter would raise Ava with family support, while I, the young, unstable, financially dependent mother, would be granted supervised visitation, at best. I had no lawyer, no money, no power. They had it all. And just like that, my daughter was gone. But they didn't take all of me, because when you steal a mother's child, you don't get to sleep peacefully ever again. I didn't scream anymore. I didn't beg. I went silent. Because silence is where revenge learns to breathe. I started making plans, learning their cracks, studying their weaknesses, not because I wanted to hurt them, because I wanted to make sure that they never knew peace again, and I wasn't going to take Ava back by force. I was going to make them wish they had never heard her name. Grief has stages, they say: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I never got to acceptance. Instead, I created a stage of my own: reconstruction, not of my life, but of my purpose. I stopped crying the night I sat alone in a cheap motel room outside of town, looking at the only photo I had of Ava, her tiny hand curled around my pinky finger. That picture wasn't printed. It was in a text Carter had sent me in the hospital. I screenshotted it before they locked me out of everything. It was blurry, but it was mine. That night, I wrote something in my journal. 6 words that would shape the next 2 years of my life. They took her. I take everything. I wasn't going to make the mistake of rushing. That's what they expected. An emotional outburst, a public meltdown, maybe even a criminal act they could use to prove I was dangerous. So I disappeared. Quietly. I changed my last name, moved states, picked up night shifts. Waitress, gas station clerk, data entry. I didn't care what the job was. Every dollar went into a locked metal box I kept under the floorboard. I read everything I could get my hands on: family court law, custody loopholes, defamation, estate planning. I studied the Whitmores, Carter's family, like I was preparing for war. Because I was. Carter's father, Charles Whitmore, was a corporate real estate giant with a pristine image. He funded hospitals, charities, scholarship programs. But he also had secrets, like the offshore accounts he funneled donations through, or the silent settlements his company paid to silence former employees. And his wife, Denise, the high society queen? She had two faces, one for the press, another for the household staff she regularly verbally abused. I started collecting stories. I posed as a journalist working on a piece about philanthropic families of the South. People opened up more than you'd think. Eventually, I found a maid who used to work in their home, Rosita. She remembered me. "You were always so kind to Ava," she said in her thick accent. "You talked to her like she was a person, not a trophy." I asked her one question. Did they ever speak badly about me in front of Ava? Her answer was what shattered my final shred of restraint. "They tell her you were sick, that you didn't love her enough to stay." My breath caught. Lies. Poison. And now, they were feeding that poison to my baby. That's when the revenge stopped being about justice. It became about Ava's truth. I didn't want them to just lose power. I wanted Ava to grow up and one day know that her mother didn't abandon her. Her mother fought, silently, ruthlessly, intelligently. So I planned a strategy that would hit them where it hurt: their reputation, their control, their legacy, and most importantly, their peace. Because I couldn't touch them with fire or fists, but I could bury them with the truth. I just needed the right timing, the right evidence, and one person inside who hated them just as much as I did. Sometimes revenge doesn't come from enemies. It comes from within their circle, the ones who know their darkest secrets, but smile at Sunday brunch. I found my first crack in the Whitmore empire through someone they never suspected: Carter's cousin, Jillian. We'd barely spoken during the time I was part of their family. She was the quiet one, the girl always reading a book in the corner while the rest bragged about deals and vacations. But beneath her silence was a smoldering fire I hadn't noticed back then. I reached out through a burner social account. "You don't know me well, but I know the Whitmores hurt more people than just me. I think we both want the same thing: to take off their masks. You in?" It was a risk. She could have exposed me. But Jillian didn't just respond. She sent one word: "Finally." We met in secret, a nondescript coffee shop miles from her city, both of us wearing baseball caps like fugitives. And that's when she told me everything. Jillian was Charles Whitmore's niece. Her father was Charles's younger brother, long cut out of the family's inner circle after he disagreed with how Charles handled a land deal that led to a wrongful eviction scandal. "I grew up watching them destroy people and walk away clean," she said. "They think reputation is everything. I want to burn it to the ground." I told her my story, every twisted detail: the hospital, the fake guardianship, the lies they fed Ava. Jillian's face didn't even flinch. "Sounds like them," she said coldly. "Denise would drown a puppy if it meant better press. Carter's just her puppet." Together, we devised a plan. Not to kidnap Ava, not to fight a losing legal battle, but to make the truth undeniable. Jillian had access to private family records: emails, recordings, foundation reports. She was smart, strategic, the kind of person who watched for years, taking notes for the day she'd finally snap. She told me about an upcoming Whitmore Foundation gala. It was their annual spectacle, the event that kept their halo polished. Every local news outlet would be there. Celebrities, business partners, donors, and this year, Carter would be speaking. A perfect opportunity, Jillian said, because what you need is not sympathy. You need irrefutable evidence shown in the court of public opinion. We mapped out every move, while Jillian handled gathering internal files and preparing a whistleblower leak. I focused on compiling my own dossier. Ava's hospital records, timestamps, proof of forged signatures, testimonies from staff who'd since quit the Whitmore estate. We created a timeline, visuals, a digital package so airtight even a PR team of 50 couldn't undo it. But most of all, we crafted a video, a short, powerful exposé narrated by my own voice, explaining everything. Calm, composed, devastating. We didn't plan to go viral. We planned to go surgical, slicing their pristine image apart until nothing remained but truth and ash. And we'd release it on the night of the gala. But to ensure the blow landed perfectly, I needed one more thing. I needed Ava to see it. Not now, but one day. When she was old enough to ask, "Why wasn't my mother there?" She'd get the answer. On every screen, in every paper, echoing in every corner of the world her fake protectors once ruled. The Whitmore Foundation Gala was an event that oozed excess. Velvet carpets, waiters in tuxedos, fake smiles painted across privileged faces. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, and the press whispered about who wore what, who funded what, and who would be giving the final speech. That final speech belonged to Carter Whitmore. The theme this year? Uplifting families in crisis. The irony was so thick it was almost comedic. I wasn't inside the gala. I didn't need to be. That night, I was seated in a small room in a different part of town, laptop open, headset on, watching it all unfold through a discreet live stream Jillian had managed to hook through the event's AV team. Everything was in place. The video was uploaded and queued. The media email blasts were written. The social posts were pre-scheduled. The evidence files were compressed into a neat Google Drive folder labeled "Proof that the Whitmores destroyed a mother." And Ava? She was with them, sitting front row in a white dress next to Denise, who wore her signature pearls and a smile so rehearsed it looked stapled to her face. I couldn't see Ava's expression clearly, but I could see her small frame shift in her seat, legs dangling. She looked older, taller, 7 years old, maybe, and something inside me cracked all over again. This wasn't revenge. This was remembrance. A reminder to the world that she had a mother. A real one. A present one. A robbed one. Then the moment arrived. Carter was announced. He walked up to the podium, polished in his designer suit, beaming like a man untouchable. He began his speech with lines that dripped with hypocrisy. "We at the Whitmore Foundation believe in protecting children, nurturing them, giving them stable environments where they can grow with love." Cue applause. Then came the switch. Right on cue, Jillian triggered the projector feed. The lights dimmed. The gala's logo disappeared. And my voice filled the room. "You don't know me, but you know my name, or at least they buried it. My name is Naomi Lynn, and 7 years ago, they took my daughter." Gasps rippled. The video played. A flawless, edited piece of quiet devastation. Hospital documents, legal loopholes, interview clips from staff who had quit under suspicious pressure, Rosita's testimony. My voice narrating each piece calmly, backed by soft, haunting piano music. Then came the climax. Photos of me holding Ava. Carter beside me. Dates and timestamps proving that I was present, willing, fit, and that everything they said in court was fabricated. The room was dead silent. The camera feed showed Denise's face frozen in horror, Carter stumbling backward, journalists reaching for phones, and Ava, turning toward them with a confused, worried look. Then the final message appeared on screen in bold white text: "You can't silence a mother forever. The world is listening now." The feed cut, and we pressed send. In one synchronized wave, media outlets, bloggers, whistleblower forums, and social accounts began posting. The truth couldn't be buried anymore. Not behind money, not behind lies. Within 15 minutes, #WhitmoreTruth was trending on Twitter. Within an hour, 5 national news channels picked it up. By morning, every major outlet was covering the scandal. Carter didn't finish his speech. Denise collapsed backstage. Charles Whitmore was nowhere to be found. But Ava would remember that night, not because of the dresses or the stage, but because it was the night the world heard her mother's voice. I thought the video would cause a ripple. It caused a tsunami. By sunrise, every major morning show had the Whitmores' scandal as the lead story. Talk show hosts discussed the masked cruelty of high society families. Lawyers on Twitter dissected the custody fraud. TikTokers reenacted clips from the exposé. Even influencers were tagging #JusticeForNaomi. But it was the comments from strangers that hit hardest. "This isn't just a scandal. This is a stolen motherhood. I'm a mom. I can't imagine the pain she carried in silence. She didn't scream, she strategized, and she won." It should have felt like victory, but all I felt was a quiet ache. The world knew the truth, but Ava was still caught in the middle of it. Jillian texted me 2 days later. "They're in chaos. Carter's firm has cut ties. Denise has deleted all socials. And Ava, she's been asking questions." That last part made my breath catch. Apparently, Ava had seen pieces of the video. Not the entire thing. They were trying to shield her. But the cracks had formed. She asked why the lady in the video had her name. Why people kept calling her Naomi's daughter. Why the kids at her school were whispering. Carter, in damage control mode, issued a public statement claiming the video was heavily manipulated and emotionally misleading. But it was too late. The court of public opinion had made its ruling. And Denise? She tried to play the grandmother card, appearing once on a news network, trembling hands, faux tears, talking about how she only wanted what was best for Ava. That segment aired at 8 p.m. By 8:27, 3 former nannies had released statements of their own. By 9:10, the anchor apologized for airing Denise's spin. By 10 p.m., the Whitmores were officially untouchable. Not in power, but in disgrace. But all I could think about was Ava. She was a child, innocent, confused, in the crossfire of something far too complex for her tender mind. And then one night, she sent a letter. Not through the Whitmores, not through lawyers, through Jillian. Ava had written it herself, tucked in a purple envelope with stickers on it. I stared at it for hours before I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, uneven, the handwriting large and clumsy. "Dear Naomi, are you really my mom? Everyone says you are. I don't know what to think. I saw you in the video. I saw a baby in your arms. Was that me? Why did you leave? Were you sick? Were you sad? Why didn't you come back?" Each sentence hit like a blade. I don't know what's true, but I remember a dream I had a lot when I was little. A woman used to sing to me in the hospital. I thought I made it up, but her voice was the same as yours. My hand covered my mouth. I had sung to Ava the night she was born. I'd whispered lullabies into her tiny ear in the dark, moments before they took her away. And somehow, her heart had remembered. I hope I can meet you one day. I don't know what I'll say, but I think I'll know you when I see you. No signature, just a tiny sticker of a heart. It was in that moment, not when the video went viral, not when the Whitmores fell, that I felt the deepest cut. Because I didn't just want justice. I wanted my daughter back. But wanting isn't enough in the world of custody battles and bloodline politics. So I dried my tears and began preparing the next phase. Because Ava was asking questions now, and I was going to make damn sure the answers led her back to me. The letter from Ava wasn't just a crack in the wall, it was the signal flare I had waited years for. She remembered me. Not in name, not in full detail, but in sensation, in song. And that meant one thing. She was old enough to start asking questions, and if the Whitmores weren't going to give her the truth, I'd give her the right to hear it, in court. I met with a family lawyer named Rachel Monroe. Sharp, fierce, a single mother herself who had once fought her own uphill custody battle against a connected ex-husband. The moment she heard my story, she didn't blink. She just leaned forward and said, "We're going to break their hold, piece by piece." We filed for a custody reversal and full parental restoration. It wasn't easy. I still had no legal guardianship on file, not even visitation rights. On paper, I was a ghost. The Whitmores had made sure of that years ago. But now? Now I had proof of fraud, manipulated consent forms, forged hospital paperwork, and digital evidence of their defamation, all preserved, backed up, and submitted with surgical precision. And the court of public opinion? It wasn't just watching, it was roaring. News outlets followed the filing. Reddit threads tracked the legal process like a courtroom drama. Every time the Whitmores tried to pivot, the public dragged them back. Every press statement was dissected, and every move they made only made them look more like villains clutching onto the illusion of control. Carter tried to play the good father act, releasing a statement claiming he had only done what was best for Ava's stability. But he didn't show up to the first hearing. Denise did. In pearls, of course. I still remember the way she looked at me across the courtroom. Not with fear, not with remorse, but entitlement. She truly believed she still held the cards. The judge, an older woman with stern eyes and zero patience for drama, reviewed our petition in silence. For 2 hours, we laid it all out. The stolen hospital records, the psychological manipulation, the public deception, the threats made to former employees, the way Ava had been turned into a legacy pawn. Rachel stood with steel in her voice. This isn't just a case of a mother seeking rights. This is a woman who was stripped of her humanity, and who, despite that, never once retaliated in violence. She sought truth, she sought justice, and she protected the peace of her daughter even while her own was stolen. The judge looked at me and asked, "Do you have anything to say for yourself, Ms. Lynn?" I stood, heart pounding, knees steady. "I don't want to destroy anyone," I said. "I want to be allowed to tell my daughter the truth. From my own mouth, not through tabloids or filtered bedtime lies. I want her to know her mother didn't leave her. Her mother was taken from her. And I want the chance, even if it's slow, even if it's supervised, to know her again." Silence hung heavy. The Whitmores' lawyer tried to stall, claiming Ava's routine would be disrupted, that reintroducing me would risk emotional confusion. But the judge interrupted sharply. "You've already confused her. You've let her grow up believing a false narrative. That ends now." She granted me preliminary supervised visitation, with the court scheduling an evaluation period. It wasn't full custody, but it was the first crack in the door, and this time, I wasn't backing away. Ava would see me, hear me, and eventually she would know me. The day I was scheduled to see Ava felt like a dream I was too afraid to fully wake up in. The court-appointed visitation center was a neutral space, brightly colored walls, shelves filled with board games, teddy bears, and motivational posters, trying too hard to ease real-life pain. A counselor sat quietly in the corner with a notepad, there to observe and report. I knew this meeting was a test of my readiness, my emotional stability, my ability to connect without overwhelming. But none of that mattered. Because today, I was going to see my daughter. Not in a photograph, not from a distance, but face to face. I wore a soft blue sweater, the same color I'd worn the day she was born. A strange, sentimental choice, but it made me feel connected to the last time she looked at me without knowing she'd be taken away. When the door creaked open, my breath caught. There she was, Avenue 7 years old, tall for her age, honey brown curls tucked into a ponytail. She wore a pink jacket with a small flower pin on the chest. She hesitated at the door, clutching a stuffed giraffe under one arm. I stood up but didn't rush, didn't reach, just smiled. Her eyes locked onto mine. There was no spark of recognition, not like the movies, just curiosity. "Hi," I said softly. "I'm Naomi." She nodded. "I know." Her voice was small but steady. We sat down across from each other at a small table. The counselor stayed silent, simply watching. Ava broke the ice first, pulling a puzzle box from the shelf. "You like puzzles?" she asked. "I do," I said. "I used to do them a lot when I was a little girl." She poured the pieces onto the table. We began in silence, piece by piece, edge by edge. She didn't ask anything big, didn't cry, didn't lean into me or away. She just existed, with me. And that was enough. After a while, she spoke again. "Why did you put that video on the internet?" I froze for a moment. Then, carefully, I responded. "Because I wanted you to know that I didn't leave you, that I never wanted to be away from you, and that what happened to us wasn't fair." She frowned, still focused on the puzzle. "Grandma says you were sick and poor." "I was sad," I said. "But I wasn't sick, and I wasn't dangerous. I just didn't have as much money as them. But I loved you. I love you now." Ava didn't look up, but her fingers paused on a puzzle piece. "My friend said I look like you." I smiled gently. "I see it too." She glanced up finally. Her eyes, so familiar, so bright, locked onto mine with something new this time. Not recognition, not yet, but softness. "Will I see you again?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "If you want to, yes." She nodded once and quietly went back to finishing the puzzle. We didn't hug. There were no dramatic breakdowns. But when the visit ended and she looked back at me before leaving the room, I saw it. That flicker, that quiet wondering, that seed of something that could grow, hope. The weeks that followed were the quietest war I've ever fought. Ava and I were granted weekly supervised visits. 1 hour, same room, same counselor in the corner. But every time, something in her grew warmer. A longer smile, a question that dug a little deeper, a pause that lingered before she walked away. She told me about school, her favorite teacher, her dream of becoming an artist. She even showed me a sketch once, a stick figure girl with curly hair holding a giraffe. "She's me," she said proudly. "And that's Mr. Pickles." She pointed to the giraffe. I laughed. "He's very handsome." These were the moments I lived for. Not viral attention, not courtroom drama, just this. The slow rebuilding of what was stolen from both of us. But the Whitmores? They weren't done fighting. Publicly, they had disappeared, their names barely surfacing outside courtroom briefings and backhanded tabloid mentions. But behind the scenes, they were digging in, reloading, and sharpening every legal knife they had left. It started with Carter filing for a protective parental reinstatement, accusing me of mental manipulation during visits. They claimed my conversations with Ava were emotionally coercive, that I was implanting trauma and disrupting her emotional equilibrium. Then came the character assassinations. Old blogs I wrote during my healing process were suddenly dug up and misquoted. Comments I made in grief forums were screenshotted and used as proof of instability. A single tweet I made years ago, a sarcastic one-liner about wanting to disappear, was presented as suicidal ideation. But the real blow came from Ava herself. not by her words, but by what she'd been told. It was during our sixth visit. We were coloring. I drew a sunflower. She drew a rain cloud. Why a rain cloud? I asked, lightheartedly. She shrugged. Because that's what Mommy said you brought. I paused. What do you mean? She said, you made her sick. That after you left, she had to see a doctor every day. That's why I can't stay with you. Because you make people break. I stared at her. A child trying to make sense of grown-up lies. A child repeating poison like a bedtime story. My hands trembled. My heart didn't just ache, it burned. They weren't just trying to ruin me anymore. They were trying to turn Ava against her own instincts. I swallowed my pain. Do you think I made you feel broken? I asked softly. She looked at me, thought for a long moment. No, she whispered. I feel happy when I'm here, but then I feel bad after. Why? Because I don't want to make Mommy cry. The weight of that broke me in places I didn't know still existed. Because this wasn't a custody battle anymore. It was a psychological war, and Ava was the battlefield. When the visit ended, I hugged her, the first time she let me, and whispered into her ear, "You're allowed to love more than one person, and you're never, ever bad for feeling joy." She squeezed back, tighter than I expected. When she walked away, she turned around and gave me a small, sad wave. I waved back, but inside, something had snapped. This wasn't about slow progress anymore. The Whitmores were still poisoning her, quietly, daily. If I wanted to save my daughter, I couldn't just play fair. I needed to end this. And I knew exactly where to strike next. Not in court, not online, but in the very foundation that gave them their power. There's one truth people often ignore when they talk about the powerful. They don't fear being hated, they fear being discredited. The Whitmores built their legacy on illusion, family values, philanthropy, prestige. But beneath that polished marble facade was a machine fueled by hush money, corporate intimidation, and legal manipulation. I didn't just want to win my daughter back. I wanted to dismantle the engine they used to hurt women like me. So I went back to the beginning, to the very foundation that gave the Whitmores their status, the Whitmore Family Trust. An untouchable, decades-old financial institution with enough tax shelters and layered shell companies to make a criminal proud. But I had Jillian. And Jillian? She still had access. She'd never been removed from the outer ring of the trust's board. A position Charles had given her years ago as a vanity nod to family unity. He never imagined she'd turn on him. That was his first mistake. With Jillian's help, we started mapping where their money really went. Not just the donations to hospitals and schools, but the ones labeled as development grants and subsidiary support. We traced one in particular, a charity listed as Sunlight Futures. The IRS thought it was a literacy program, but we discovered it was actually a slush fund, used to pay off employees who'd been fired after alleging racial discrimination, sexual harassment, and even abuse within Whitmore-owned real estate holdings. All quietly buried. And guess who signed most of those transfers? Denise. Once we had the paper trail, we reached out to 3 of the silenced employees. Jillian and Rachel handled the conversations delicately. Off the record, carefully coordinated. 2 of them agreed to come forward. We compiled everything, not for the court, but for the press. Because while legal justice moves slow, public ruin is lightning fast. The exposé was released by a mid-level investigative outlet. Not flashy, not sensational, but accurate, piercing, undeniable. Headline: Philanthropy or Payoff? Inside the hidden machinery of the Whitmore Family Trust. What followed was an avalanche. 2 major sponsors dropped their affiliation with the Whitmore Foundation. The IRS opened an inquiry into their charity status. A local university revoked Carter's Leadership in Real Estate Alumni Award. Denise was removed from the hospital board she chaired. And then the hammer dropped. A formal class action lawsuit was filed against the trust for ethical misconduct and fraudulent misrepresentation. They were being sued by their own legacy. I wasn't just taking Ava back anymore. I was taking their peace, their name, and the very shell they used to hide behind. Jillian sent me a message the day the lawsuit made national news. We didn't light the fire. They poured the gas. We just struck the match. And in the background? Carter filed a request to pause custody proceedings, claimed the media was emotionally damaging Ava, that the case was being exploited. But the judge didn't buy it. She issued a ruling that surprised even Rachel. All visitation would now be unsupervised. 1 day a week. No intermediaries. Because the court had seen enough. They knew which side was building a home, and which one was trying to preserve a castle built on lies. Ava would now get to know me, without filtered walls, without planted guilt, without scripted bedtime stories. And slowly, she would see what they tried so hard to erase, her real mother. The first time Ava came to my small apartment without a court supervisor, she walked through the door like she was entering a place both foreign and familiar. She clutched Mr. Pickles, her ever-present giraffe, and scanned the room with wide eyes. My place was modest, quiet, filled with plants, books, and soft lighting. Nothing like the marble halls and polished chandeliers of the Whitmore estate. She turned to me and whispered, "It smells like cinnamon." I smiled. "That's the candle I always burned when I was pregnant with you." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she nodded and walked in, like her feet knew the space before her mind caught up. We cooked together that day, made pancakes in the shape of stars. She spilled flour all over the counter, and I laughed until I cried. Not because it was funny, but because it was real, unfiltered. Ours. We painted afterward. I gave her the canvas. She gave me her trust, piece by piece, layer by layer, like the watercolors she smudged into bright bursts of sky and sea. But then came the question. We were sitting on the floor, sorting through colored pencils, when she asked it. "Why did you really leave?" I froze. My heart begged me to lie, to shield her, to make it easier. But my soul? It owed her the truth. I put the pencils down, turned to her gently, and said, "I didn't leave you, Ava. I never would have. I wanted you more than anything I've ever wanted in my life. But some people I thought I could trust. They took you away before I could stop them." She blinked, eyes uncertain. "Like stole me?" I nodded slowly. "Not in the way you think. They used lies. They used rules. They said things that weren't true and used them to make it look like I wasn't good enough to be your mom." Her lips quivered. "But Grandma said you signed a paper." I swallowed hard. "They gave me that paper when I was sick from giving birth, when I was weak. I didn't understand what they were doing, and they never gave you the chance to know me after that." Ava looked down. "They said you didn't want me." That sentence shattered something inside me. I reached out, gently touching her hand. "I have always wanted you, every day, every second. I thought about you when I brushed my teeth, when I saw the moon, when I heard a song I used to hum to you before they took you away." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked so small in that moment. So brave. "Why didn't you come find me?" I paused. "Because I had to wait for the right moment. If I had come sooner, they would have stopped me again. But now you're older. You're asking. And now, I'm here." She threw her arms around me before I could finish. She didn't sob. She didn't say anything. She just held on. And I held her like I had the day she was born, afraid to breathe, afraid to blink, afraid it would disappear again. After a while, she whispered into my shoulder, "I believe you." 3 words. That's all it took to undo 7 years of silence. And I knew then, with a certainty deeper than bone, the Whitmores had lost. Because they hadn't just lost Ava's legal guardianship, they had lost her heart. The final court hearing arrived like a storm everyone saw coming. Media cameras lined the sidewalk outside the courthouse. Protesters held signs that read, "Let her stay with her mother," and "Children aren't property." Supporters of the Whitmores were few and far between now. Their empire of lies had crumbled far too publicly. Inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. Charles Whitmore didn't even show. Denise wore all black, as if mourning her reputation. Carter sat next to their legal team, pale and expressionless, his suit wrinkled, hands trembling. But the room belonged to Ava. The judge had allowed her to make a private statement in accordance with child representation laws. She was deemed mature enough to express her preference. She'd worked with a child advocate in the weeks prior, and what she said would be read aloud, in her own words. I didn't know what she wrote. No one did. The judge asked for silence. The clerk unfolded the letter, and then Ava's words filled the room, innocent, raw, and far more powerful than any attorney's voice. I used to think love was who tucked me in, who made me eggs, who bought me toys. But now I know love is who stays when things are hard, who tells the truth even if it's scary, who doesn't make me choose sides. I don't want to be in a house where people lie about my mom. I want to be able to ask questions. I want to visit her and know she's real and kind and not someone I'm supposed to be scared of. I'm not scared of her. I feel safe with her. The courtroom was silent. Even the Whitmores didn't interrupt. I still love Grandma and Grandpa, but I want to live with Naomi. I want to know her more. I want her to be at my school plays. I want to show her my paintings. I want her to be the one I talk to when I have a bad day. The clerk folded the letter. The judge exhaled. Then came the verdict. Effective immediately, legal custody of Ava Whitmore is hereby transferred to Naomi Lynn. Full parental rights restored. Visitation rights will be offered to the Whitmore family pending psychological review and court supervision. My breath caught. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat still, as if afraid that moving would shatter the moment. And then Ava turned to me, from her seat beside the child advocate, and smiled. She mouthed, "We did it." And finally, I let the tears come. Carter stood and walked out without a word. Denise followed, her heels clicking like nails in the floor. But I didn't watch them leave. I walked to Ava, knelt in front of her, and held out my arms. She didn't hesitate. She ran into them like she'd been waiting her whole life to do it. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel powerful. I felt whole. Years of grief, silence, and strategic revenge had led here. Not to a courtroom win, but to a daughter choosing her mother. Freely, clearly, completely. And the Whitmores? They hadn't just lost a battle. They lost their control, their grip, their illusion. Most of all, they lost the one thing they thought they owned, Ava's loyalty. But loyalty can't be bought. It's earned, day by day, moment by moment, truth by painful truth. The house is quiet now, not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of peace. Ava's backpack is on the floor by the couch. Her shoes are kicked off in the hallway. Mr. Pickles sits crookedly on her bed, waiting for her to return from art class. It's a simple life, but it's ours. Some mornings, I still wake up expecting it all to vanish, like it was some elaborate daydream I conjured to survive the grief. But then I hear her humming down the hallway or see her doodles taped to the fridge, and I remember, this is real. She's real, and she's mine again. It's not perfect. The trauma doesn't evaporate overnight. Ava still asks questions, hard ones. Sometimes she has nightmares or moments of confusion when a memory from the Whitmores resurfaces. But we talk, we cry, we paint it out, word by word, color by color. And every time she looks at me and calls me Mom, another scar inside me fades. The Whitmores? They've faded too. Carter left the city. No one's heard from him publicly in months. His name is still tied to the lawsuit involving the family trust. Denise is under ongoing investigation for financial mismanagement. Their foundation collapsed. Their name, once untouchable, is now synonymous with scandal. But I don't follow the headlines anymore. Because I didn't take their empire. I took their peace. The kind of peace that lets you sleep at night knowing your secrets are safe. The kind of peace that lets you walk into a room without flinching at a whisper. They'll never know that kind of peace again. And honestly, neither will I. But the difference is, I made peace with that. Because now I live in truth. In laughter-filled kitchens and bedtime snuggles and Friday night pancakes. In the warmth of a child who chose me, not because of money or power, but because I fought for her with every breath I had left. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclamation, taking back my name, my story, my motherhood. And now, if you're still listening, if you're a mother or a daughter or someone who's ever had to beg for your truth to be heard, I want you to know something. You are not what they took from you. You are what you chose to fight for, what you refused to let die, and what you are rebuilding, day by day, moment by moment. I was once the girl who whispered lullabies to a baby they said I wasn't fit to raise. Now I'm the woman who tells her bedtime stories. Stories we write together. And if you're wondering what Ava says about everything now, she says this: You didn't take their peace, Mommy. You just gave them back the silence they gave you. Smart girl. Just like her mother.